Welcome. I'm Ellen Cravato. I'm the CEO of New Canaan Library. It is a great pleasure to have you all here today. I want to say thank you so much to our partners at the YMCA for co-producing today's Being Seen event, and thank you to Rebecca Fox for organizing. But I especially want to thank Yush Staltkoper of NeuroSpark Plus for arranging for Dr. Bartlett to share her expertise. As partners, we all share a mission to support families and support education in our community regarding neurodivergent populations. And we're very proud that our staff has taken such an incredible leadership position in this field, finding new ways to create inclusive experiences for families of neurodiverse children. So over the past couple of years, we've been the very grateful recipients of Community Foundation grants, and working with community members like Yush and partners like the Y, we've been able to start to offer monthly programs for parents of neurodivergent children and programs for children with a wide array of support needs. And our program participation continues to grow, and we are very excited that we're going to be able to expand this programming in the coming year ahead, which there'll be a much greater focus on community education. Outside of this specific focus on special needs community, we've also been thrilled to offer programs that supports parents of children of all stages of development. And in the last year, we've had experts from the fields of pathology, speech pathology, education, psychology, and now neuroscience. And we hope to continue to develop our partner programs and offerings, and we would really like to know what topics would be of interest. So if anyone has thoughts, suggestions, recommendations, please email Rebecca at rfox@newcanaanlibrary.org. New Canaan Library was built to be a center of community and connection, and we are really proud to welcome 1,800 people through our doors every day. That's a big number, isn't it? And something like today, where we have this incredible three-way collaboration between community partners, is a prime example of how we think we're able to serve New Canaan as a community. So I hope you will join me in thanking and welcoming Margaret Riley, Executive Director of the YMCA, to the stage, thanking her for their partnership and overall leadership in ensuring the health and wellness of our community. Again, thanks to everyone for being here today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Margaret Riley, Executive Director of the YMCA. Thank you, Ellen, and thank you to the New Canaan Library for co-sponsoring this event with us and for offering us this absolutely beautiful and fantastic space to host it at today. The Y's mission is to enrich all people in spirit, mind, and body. And programs such as this help us to fulfill our goal of enriching the overall wellness of every individual. So we're very pleased and happy to be here today and to be supporting bringing a program like this to our community. I have the pleasure of introducing Yush Staltkoper. Good, okay, good, thanks. Yush is a member of the YMCA's Board of Directors and is going to help to present this program today. Her professional connections help to bring Dr. Bartlett to our community. We're very excited to be here, and with that, I will turn this over to Yush to get this going. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, so it's partnerships like this that make all of these incredible things that we do a difference and possible. And I think when we support parents in our community, it enables us to thrive together. And so this is especially welcoming moment to be here. And I want to thank everybody for coming today, because that is a very important step. And before we dive in, I think some of you have already scanned the QR code. We just want to get a sense of who is here in the room and what sort of topics are top of mind for you. So based on what I see already, there are a lot of parents or caretakers in the room, about 83% of you. And so we know this topic is going to be really relevant. And I think if everyone's had a chance to get through the first poll, there will be another question that it looks like it's moving. So there will be another question that will be popping up just to get a sense of the age group of your children. And also just a reminder, throughout the event, the same QR code, you're able to submit questions. It can be anonymous. We will also have a live Q&A at the end of the session, so we encourage you to submit it however works best for you. And while you're doing all of that, I'd like to introduce myself. So I'm a fellow parent in New Canaan. I have two wonderful boys. They are in elementary school and in preschool. I'm a neurodivergent mom to a neurodivergent child, and so this is really my lived experience that's motivated me to do so much of this work. And NeuroSpark Plus was born from that. It used to be called the Twice Exceptional Network, which I think a lot of you are familiar with, and really just to create a level of support for parents who are navigating some of the biggest challenges in parenting today. I have gone through that experience myself and have learned a lot from people like Dr. Bartlett. And we all need a lot more support these days than we've ever gotten before. And so with that, this session is really for wherever you are in your parenting journey, and it doesn't really matter how old your kids are. I don't think this type of knowledge and information is ever really too late. So I'm so honored to have Selena here with us today. She spent 30 years of her life helping people understand the connection between stress, parenting, and brain health. Selena, welcome to New Canaan. She is all the way here from Australia, just so you all know. And I would love for you to share a little bit more about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much for showing up for your children. It's not easy to find the time. I've done it, been in your shoes. Together, my husband and I have raised 5 children between us. So just to give you a little background as to why I'm here and why I want to show up for you, is because in 1989, I was a pharmacist in Brisbane, Australia. My sister got a mental illness. She ended up in a lock-up ward and an overdose of haloperidol, and I was in there with her. And I'm like, this is quite strange. We mustn't know how the brain works because her treatment was so traumatic. So I went and retooled and started my PhD in neuropharmacology. And then I got trained in developmental neurobiology at Australian National University. And then I moved to America, to University of California, San Francisco, and ran a research lab there for 12 years before I returned to here at the Translational Research Institute. My only mission in my life as a scientist was not to be a professor, but to understand the brain to improve the lives of people and to understand what happened to my sister and how can we make a difference and do it differently. And I worked it all out over a long period of time. I actually even worked for Pfizer at White Plains at some point when I was at UCSF. I was developing drugs for a long time with that kind of mindset. So I kind of worked out I was wrong, and what I'm going to share with you today in these conversations is that we actually understand what drove my sister's mental illness, and we know we can do it differently. And that's the concept of neuroplasticity, how early life experiences with genetics and genomics contribute to the way the brain develops, and I'm going to show you why we know that. And I was just really lucky as a neuroscientist because during the 90s, functional MRI was developed by Joy Hirsch at Columbia. She's a pioneer. She's now at Yale. And I'm going to share with you the very latest science that's going to be a game changer. But she was the one in the 90s that allowed us to see inside the human living brain for the first time in history. That changes a lot of things. Once you can see something, you can't keep making it up anymore or ignoring how early life experiences, specifically adverse childhood experiences, impacts the way the brain develops, and that leads to a lot of things later in life. And so that's my journey, and we'll be talking more about that today.
Yes, thank you so much, Selena. She brings so much expertise and knowledge and wisdom. And I think the most relevant part is she's also a parent. And so when we think about how we apply these practical science-backed tools and knowledge as a parent, we have to be able to translate that to sort of day-to-day and how we show up for our children. And so, Selena, I would love to hear a little bit more about how you became involved with the Scene documentary and why all the messages within that documentary are so important.
Yeah, so this is an amazing, remarkable story. And so this is the functional MRI I was telling you about, and I'll talk to that in a second. But so my book is called Being Seen. And I have a phone on the cover for a specific reason, because that's the latest 2025 issue for families. That's massive and really causing mental illness in children. And it's just throwing gas onto what was already existing out there that we hadn't solved yet around how early life experiences shape the brain. This has really thrown a spanner in the works, and it's exponential change in anxiety and depression and all sorts of things for children, which we can talk about later. But why I got involved is the film ended up taking the name of my book. And they met me and they heard about my work and said, can we film you? We're doing this documentary on parenting. And so they filmed me the next week and we made a sizzle reel. And then a woman saw the film and said, and put $320,000 into the executive producer's bank account, no contract, said, go and finish that documentary. It is exactly what's needed right now. I have the resources to see this. I want everyone to see it. So within 2 years, it's been released around Australia, and it was won an award at the Film Festival in Santa Barbara on May the 3rd. So now we're allowed to show it in the US. I got involved because it's the most important thing that you can do on the planet is to improve the lives of children, to give them, like all of us, we want to have thriving minds and lives, don't we? And we're responsible for the next generation. And when you understand what this knowledge, you can do better with the knowledge, but we didn't really have the same tools. And so I got involved with that because it's the most important thing I can do with my life, is to get this message out in multiple ways. So, and you'll see when we show the documentary, which I don't know if you want to yet, and then we can come back and use this slide to discuss why parenting impacts children so massively, if you like. But and then we can go to saying why it's called Seen after that, if you like, because sometimes it might be better to see it so we know what we're talking about.
Absolutely. So I think Rebecca's going to pull up, it's just the trailer. It's about 2 minutes, but it gives you a little preview of what the documentary is about. And, you know, over the past year that I've known Dr. Bartlett, I've learned so much from her, and it's really changed the way I parent. And everything is essentially based on how the brain functions. And so it enables us to understand things at a core level that I think really can help guide us in the way that we parent and the way we connect with our children. So there we go. So I don't know if that moves you like it does me every single time. That is just a trailer. So you can imagine the full documentary, the impact and power it has. You're leaving yourself in them as a legacy. When I hear that, it really changes everything for the way I see myself as a parent and what my power as a parent is. And so, you know, these words remind us that the power is within us and we have the ability to think about how we want to use that power. And for me, the hope is that this legacy is something that you build moment by moment and interaction by interaction. It's not something that just happens at one point in time. And so Dr. Bartlett earlier talked about neuroplasticity, and that is really our wiring. And the fact that we can evolve that at any stage. Nothing is set in stone. And I think that's really what I hope you walk away from today. But I would love to for Selena to share a little bit more about what that means, what that looks like, and how that contributes to our child's development.
Yeah, so Seen, why is it called Seen? Why is it being seen? That was the name that I was given by my grandmother when I was 3, and my sister was not, and she was not seen. And so that's something that's not one of the adverse childhood experiences scores. And we don't understand that. Well, we do now from a scientific point of view, that when you see someone, it's the building block and the foundation for a healthy brain and wellness that expands the lifespan. So when someone sees you for exactly who you are and not what society is saying they should be or all of these other variables that make parenting so difficult, it is a game changer from a child's brain development perspective. And we know that through scientific studies and thousands of papers. It's just not in enough training manuals, which is why having a film or books or podcasts and any methods we can get this information to people. So what we now know through neuroscience is that the brain can change forever. That's the concept of neuroplasticity. And in this film, what you'll see, what I love about the film is that it's very vulnerable, it's very authentic, and it takes you on all of the journey of the parents that changed themselves. And that is what changed it for their children. It's not the other way around, where we think we have to change the children. It's when you change yourself with very specific, easy, not easy but hard, because neuroplasticity isn't easy, because you've got to deal with a bunch of pain, because what we now know through science and genomics is that under stress and pressure, and there's a lot when you're raising children, parenting is really hard, and no one tells you that when you have your children. And I'm no expert, by the way. I'm just a little person on the planet trying to do my best. I'm no great parent. I'm just learning. But it's the biggest tool you can give yourself is to see yourself first before you try and look at changing your children, because that's all you need to do. in a way, because all they need is some love and attention, some water and some food, like you give a tree or a flower, is honestly what you need for healthy brain development for children. But changing ourselves is hard because under stress, what we now know through parental neuroscience is that we lean back to and pull out without even knowing that the parenting models that you grew up with. Because how you were parented is how you're going to parent, because that's how evolution works. We just keep passing on. And the film is a beautiful thing because it captures they're breaking generational cycles, basically. And some of it's really quite traumatic cycles and some of it's not. So it's on a spectrum because we're all coming from very, very different starting places. And we all have different ways of handling stress and pressure. So neuroplasticity teaches us that the brain can change forever, and it just takes the first step, really, and that's starting with ourselves.
Thank you, Selena. And, you know, I can attest to that. That's been my journey. I had to do the inner work. When I noticed that my child was struggling, I had to ask, am I equipped to support his needs? And I realized I wasn't, because the parenting tools and everything that was modeled for me didn't work for him. And so doing that inner work is what enabled me to get to a place where I could truly connect with him and understand him and see him. And it has changed everything. He's thriving now, and it's just been phenomenal, this journey. And it's, you know, just been such a game changer for us, understanding at a deep level what I was capable of.
And I want to say too that parents think it's too late, because, you know, our kids are in their 20s and 30s. It's never too late. We either have been parented ourselves, which affects how we can handle our own mental health, or we're going to be grandparents or aunties and uncles, or even people you work with. So when you understand this deeply, it's not just parent to child, it's person to person, because of the new science demonstrating interbrain synchrony, so we can actually measure our impact on other people now. And that's the next work that's coming too, which is so exciting.
Selena has endless things that she's working on to help us better understand these connections. So I want to move to the next question. I want to make sure that we're addressing some of the things that might be top of mind for this specific audience. And by the way, most of you, 42% of children who are ages 6 to 12. And so that's sort of understanding. We also have some children who are adults and ages 0 to 5, and teens 13 to 18, around 38%. So we have parents in this room who have children at all different levels. And like Selena said, it's never too early, never too late. And because my children are young, I feel like I'm giving them a very stable foundation that they otherwise might not have gotten.
And this is beautiful, 6 to 12. You are so lucky. Oh my God, I wish I was you. My kids are grown up. I had no chance. I only found out this when my daughter was 14 and my son was 17. But between 10 and 14 and plus is a new window of neuroplasticity. So there's two big ones, 0 to 3, which is why the brain's so exquisitely sensitive to stress. So on the right here is a healthy brain. And if I gave you a little test now, I could switch your brain over to the left, which is, see, there's very little red up in the top part of the brain. The brain's exquisitely sensitive to stress, so that's why how you look at someone, how you speak to someone, depending on their multi-generational impacts, etc., they can react differently and faster. And this goes to children. So between 0 and 3, the brain's developing really fast. That's why you see them go from being highly dependent on you to sitting up and looking, moving out into the world. Their brain's really developing. Then it starts to fine-tune itself. But then what happens? You're heading to adolescence, right? Scary time for you, I know. But there's another window that opens up, and that's why children then want to be with their peers. That's the adolescent brain. So you have a massive impact, and when you do this work to change yourself then, so you're self-regulated, because you're going to have to be really self-regulated to raise a teen, right? The more you can do this for yourself, the more equipped you can be to hit the teens, because that's the most important work. Because evolutionarily, they need to move to their peers. That's the job of survival, is to move away from their family, and you've got the rope, but you're letting the rope go in a way that allows them to become independent, interdependent, independent, so they can survive in the world. So another massive area of neuroplasticity, and you get to change how your home is, how your environment is, because that's the massive factors and the main factors. It's not the school they go to that matters somewhat. It's the home environment and the community support that really is the thing that builds brain health. We know that really, effectively from lots of papers.
I think just to bring the focus to an area that we might be interested in hearing a little bit more about. We often hear that success breeds success, but many parents focus so much on outcomes, grades, sports, what colleges they will go to, that we end up losing sight of the child that's in front of us. And so how does achievement focus impacts the brain development and impacts the parent-child relationship?
So obviously my kids grew up in America, so I'm Australian and American. They grew up in the Bay Area, so I understand what you're going through. I was in the same situation, and I watched all of this going on. I'm like, oh my God, how do you handle this? But so being seen means seeing the person you have in front of you. Some brains are just already have inherited a performative brain. And you can just kind of look around the family and see that they can handle this, they can do that. There's no pressure on them, they don't feel the pressure. But there are others that want to be dancers, artists, like my sister. And my family couldn't really handle that, and that ended up causing other things to flow on over the time. So that's why being seen is it. And getting to know who you have in front of you means that you can't be on your phone, and all of these other things. And the children can't be on their phone because that's really affecting the way the brain's developing now. We also know breastfeeding, for example, you can't be on your phone when you're breastfeeding, or parents on their phone with their babies, because it's shaping outcomes and causing mental illness in children. And we know that through the work of Tracy Tawari-Dennis, where she did an experiment where instead of, the still face experiment, where if you have your children in a high chair and you're looking at your kids and then you go still face, you don't smile at them or anything, then they start getting dysregulated, looking for attention. She replaced that experiment with phones, parents on phones, and breastfeeding on phones, and the children aren't learning how to use their faces because the brain's 50% social species, meaning we need to belong to a group. So 50% of the early part of brain development is dedicated to reading faces and social, emotional learning coming from parents. So when we replace it, and that's why I had to put a screen on the cover of a book, then that's causing dysregulation and emotional dysregulation in all of us, but specifically in young babies. So it's stressful to the brain, basically, of young brains.
I actually want to follow up on that stress comment, but prior to that, you had mentioned that, I know in our conversation last night, you said there was one single thing that was so important for parents to understand. It's to focus on the social emotional development versus intelligence or creativity. And so can you just touch on that a little bit?
Because of the brain's 50% dedicated to social cognition, our ability to read faces, because we need to belong in a group to survive. You can't do this on your own. We try, but we're not being very successful, are we, for our children? We keep getting smaller and smaller groups and thinking we have to do it on our own, but parenting is the hardest job I've ever done and continues to be the hardest job in my life. And so we need support, and you'll see that in the film. We all talk about all the support that we get. We need community support, we need extended family support. You really can't do this job easily on your own. And it's just really important to get as much support as we can, but we feel like we have to do it on our own, I think. And so our children, so on the social intelligence, if you go and look at what the jobs, if you're worried about them getting jobs and whatever in the future, not going to jail, because I remember that thought, oh my God, if they don't get into this class, if they don't do that, they're going to jail when they're 25. Yeah, you hear this all the time. Well, it's like you can't help it because you're a parent and you become a mother bear, and it's just like you just want to protect. Like I understand the thinking and how it leads you down that pathway, but this is where controlling your own emotions and just giving them the love and support, then everything else flows from that. Children just need really basic stuff, like a plant. They need to be looked at. They need to be face to face. They need to learn how to read faces. They need to be with their mates in the sandpit, just hanging out, putting some sand here and there. They need to be running out in nature. They need water. And then love. Love is it. And after 30 years of studying the brain, to come back to love is a really soft woo-woo thing to say, but from a brain development perspective, I would like to see us switch from mental health to brain health. And imagine if you could take every child and we just wrap around the thought, what does a healthy brain look like? And mental health is something you have for your whole life. And don't we want that? So let's optimize their mental health and not outcomes that don't really bode well for them in the real world. And what I mean by that is because of my experience here and everywhere, I'm watching all my children grow up and my friends' children grow up, and people that maximize on outcomes end up with children in therapy at 28. Not everyone, just some, because some children aren't wanting to be that person. That's not who they are, and that's really hard to hold back on when you're in a community where everyone's competing for the same outcomes. And I understand it deeply, and I'm just saying that I understand the culture drives a lot of our choices as parents, and the feedback we get ourselves is that we're not good enough unless we're making that happen as well. So it's very complicated, and I hold your hand because I know it's not easy, especially in 2025. So I wrap my arms around you and give you as much love as I can, because it's a really important job you're doing. And I understand the difficulties that you're facing as well. So my hope that you leave today is to understand that you're good enough, you're well enough, and you're doing a wonderful job. Just let go for a little bit and let them play in the sandpit would be my advice as a children's advocate.
Thank you so much, Selena. That's really just seeing us all as human beings. You mentioned today's parenting today, we need so much more support. It's very stressful being a parent. So as a child who is around a parent who is stressed out, how does the parent's nervous system impact a child's ability to regulate their own emotions?
Well, it's everything. I'm going to keep saying it over and over again. We actually even know it now, we can measure it. So we can actually measure our impact on other people through interbrain synchrony. So Joy also discovered FNIRS, which is far near infrared spectroscopy, so we can actually measure our impact. And there's a whole new field called parental neuroscience where they're actually showing the direct impact of a parent on a child. And you know that yourself from your own. All of us have been parented or not, or had, all of us are coming from a different situation. We know the impact that it's had on us, and a lot of people end up in therapy talking about this for a long, long time. But the problem for me in this space is that we know neuroplasticity and healing is possible because the brain can change. And there's only so far many generations you can go back to understand why you do what you do. And if you then look at your previous generations, you have to come to a place of compassion because what they went through is actually much worse in many other ways, whether it's war or depression or lack of food or moving country. I mean, we could go on and on. There's a whole list of things. So it's drawing the line in the sand to say, oh, you mean I can change? And that's the hardest thing for me personally, to look at the light on myself was the hardest thing. But when I did that, and mine came because of Michael Meaney's research from McGill. So he's the one that's demonstrated that if pups haven't been shown how to lick their pups because they were never licked, as an example, then you don't have the memory banks of how to go and lick your pups, and that was me. And I was in his lecture, and finally, my daughter was 14, but finally I'm just like, oh my God, that's me. And so then I went to understand how to change that because I understood neuroplasticity by that time. I'm a slow learner. That was 20 years in. I was next door developing drugs thinking I was in the right pathway. Totally wrong. Everything I think is normally wrong. So that's the beauty of science. And why I love showing that brain slide to you is because we now know it and we can see it. We know better now. We have the papers, the education, the tools. So let's do better now with this knowledge and not keep thinking it's someone else's fault. Let's stop the blame game. Let's break the cycles. There's enough. We've done enough cycles. And we can now put a line in the sand and change it. And that's why I come out here and why we have documentaries and why we try and make these changes, because it's so impactful. And the documentary is 1:15, and I think you're going to talk about it in a minute, but it shares with you all the different ways and things you can do to shine the light on yourself first, and then just tiny little things to make a change, have a big impact. They resonate out to the community. So one person radiates, like, look what you've managed to pull off here. Thank you. I didn't even say amazing. This is so well organised. It's such a beautiful opportunity for us to be here. You know, one person made all of this happen, so we're all like that.
It was a whole team of people.
Yeah, it is.
Don't listen to her.
It is, but someone has to say, I can do that. Because when you think it's so hard, right? Like we're on a, I'm on study leave. I was at UC Berkeley on study leave. We're looking at the eye as a window into being able to show you the impact of early life experiences. I could have said, oh no, it's too hard, I'll just go straight to London to see Martin's mum. But no, you think about you and the value that you can then resonate in your community, and we all have that ripple effect capacity. And once you now see interbrain synchrony and understand that, that's huge.
And I mean, I've kind of firsthand experienced this inner work that I did has had this outer ripple, and it isn't just me, it's my child. I have 2 children, so it's both of them and my husband. I mean, it really impacts all the family dynamics. And then obviously expanding this work now to my community this is what we have within ourselves. And I do acknowledge, as a parent who is going through the same things that we're all going through, it's a lot to expect us to do the inner work while we're parenting. And so I would just encourage you to just take one small step. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and don't think that you have to know it all or do it all. And I think that's one of the hardest part about being parents is you're like, how do I help myself while I'm also helping my children? And oftentimes we forget that the most important person that we need to take care of first is ourselves, so that we can pour from, not an empty cup.
Yeah, and I would say if there's one impactful thing that will be a game changer for your whole family is the phone. It's become so ubiquitous. Every single person's on their phone now, and no one's saying that it's affecting mental health, brain health development, and child and brain development. And we now have all the research papers finally coming through. But there's been a huge suppression of this information because tech companies make a fortune out of everyone being on their phone to sell ads, to keep you on the phone. It's very addictive. It's been designed that way. And so if there's one thing I could highly recommend to a young, beautiful parents here that will go on to resonate for 3 generations. Children don't want to be on their phone. They're suing parents for like 16 to 25-year-olds because they feel like they lost their childhood. So it's a whole lot of work. In Australia, we just legislated that, I ended up in Parliament House last year. We did inquiries and things like that, and now we've legislated that children up until the age of 16 can't have social media until it's made safe, just because of what, I was with all the parents who've lost their children because of what happened to them on the phone. So I'd just like to put out there's one tiny thing, even if it's 5 minutes, it's just recognising what's going on. And you'll see it wherever I go, on trains and everywhere. You can't help but look now, and you'll see the little kids pulling things, and people working on that. I understand the pressures. I'm not trying to judge. I'm just saying, just become aware that they're looking for your attention, and you don't realise it's missing because you feel like you're present. You know what I mean? So it's just one little tiny thing that can make a big difference.
Well, Selena, I can sort of relate to this. We tested this in our house. We did a 7-month-long screen detox.
This is how we met.
Yes, this is how we met. Selena was very interested in this pilot that I did in my own family. 7 months, and I only say 7 months because it was so effective that I stopped counting. Because what happened, the outcome was that we completely changed the relationship my children had with screens. Because to me, it isn't about taking away something, it's about educating them and empowering them to make a better choice. And so that, because at the end of the day, they're still going to be surrounded by screens. So it's not about taking something away, it's about equipping them with the ability to think, you know what, I'm going to choose not to because I know what happens when I do, when I'm on the phone all the time. And so can you explain to us, though, what's happening neurologically when we remove the digital stimulation
Well,
and what changes in the developing brain?
there's multiple things. But the first thing is think of your eyes, right? So when you go out into nature, you're taking in a wide panoramic view. That decreases the stress circuit in the brain. So what does happen when we narrow our vision? It activates the stress circuits in our brain, in the brainstem and beyond. So that's one of the techniques I teach people is like in the morning, if you can just not go to your phone and go and look out the window, at least you're kind of regulating the stress circuit. So now apply that to a developing brain. And then there's the social brain. So the social cognition brain is now getting friends with a phone, whereas the brain's been designed for face-to-face recognition and being together. And that's why us being and why you showing up is so powerful today, because we're creating a container of love in this room. And you'll leave feeling better, I hope. I don't want to stress you out, so I'm going to make sure you feel loved when you leave, because we create the love environment, and that also takes down stress. So a study just got published in 2025 from New Zealand. It was the first longitudinal study looking at hours of screen time, looking at children aged 2 to 8, and then looking at outcomes. And that's whether it's academic achievement, ability to read, peer-to-peer social interactions, and academic success, meaning staying and not refusing school. And I'm happy to share that paper if anyone's interested. It's in developmental psychology. And every outcome was reduced depending on the number of hours that they were on screens. And so that's the first and so the problem for us, all of us parents, where we don't have help, we've got to try and do this on our own, where it should be at the society and community level helping you in this regard, is that everything's moved to a screen, right? In school, everything, because teachers are dropping out because it's become really hard and all of that. So it's just, I mean, I think it feels obvious to you intuitively, but no one's out there telling you, hey, this is going to cause detriments to your children's mental health over the long term, right? And we don't have the billboards. And it just reminds me of smoking, because I was developing drugs for alcohol addiction, where we'd have, you know that you can't smoke because it might kill you. But no one's saying this for technology, and especially on young children's outcomes.
And I mean, Selena, you've already shared so much today and little tidbits. Is there any last, one thing that parents can do that you really truly think will make a difference?
Yeah, and I hope we get to show this, but I think the biggest thing that I saw people resonate, it's been shown all around Australia, thousands of people have seen the documentary. The thing that when they come out and talk about it, I think the key is reparenting yourself, and this is not, and because what Nathan in the film talks about is that you become a full grown-up adult once you reparent yourself, because then you're not acting in your child's brain, in the limbic part of your brain. You're actually fully developing your brain as you reparent yourself, and what they talk about, which I think is really powerful. It's not ringing up and blaming your parents because they've also been parented, etc. It's about accepting the parts of you that weren't loved as a child over here, the feeling part, but also having compassion and love and empathy from where you've come from. But Lael Stone in the film talks about this, and she helps parents take this journey. And that's where you can't bypass the feeling part, even if it's painful. It's a you-on-you thing. It's recognising that that's happened to many of us, and it's no one's fault and it's not intentional, but then moving over to working out how to do something about that so that it's not holding back the mental health of your family. And that's what Terry in the film talks about. And I love the father story in the film. And it's, they all did this journey, and the outcomes for their family and the children were just incredible.
So we've talked a lot about Being Seen, this documentary. It is not available in the U.S. It's been part of a few film festivals. It's won an award in Santa Barbara. We have exclusive access to it today that we can show during the meet and greet after this session. It is 75 minutes long, but we are happy to show it. We don't know what the future plans are to make it accessible, but it's not currently accessible in the U.S.
Yeah, people can host screenings and that kind of thing. And there's a website for all of that to go to if they want. And I think it will eventually be available on Netflix. The UK cinemas have have screened it across the UK, and in the US it wasn't allowed to be released until after the film festival, and that happened on May the 3rd. So there are ways to show it in your community, and you can just reach out and we can show you how to do that.
Yes. Well, Dr. Bartlett is the contact for that. So while science is universal, every family's journey is different. I've seen some anonymous questions come through, asking some, further deep diving questions. We would love to now open the conversation up to you. We want to make sure that you have your questions addressed. So we're happy to answer any questions live. We're also happy to take some of the questions that were submitted via the poll. So we do have 2 mics roving around. So if you would like to ask a question, please just raise your hands and somebody will come to you.
Hi, Yush. You mentioned that you, sort of educated your kids on screen time so that they could make their own decisions on how much screen time they had. I'm just wondering how you did that, because I feel like I see stuff contrary to what you said. I see a lot of information out there about what the screens and social media and all of that is doing to developing brains. And my daughter is really good with her phone. She leaves it down on, the charging station and all that. But my son is a little bit more resistant, and I do forward him things but I would just love something that is short and sweet so that he could view it quickly while I'm standing there, and that would hopefully make him stop scrolling.
How old is he?
15.
Yes, so that the teenage years are a little bit harder because they've already they've already built these habits. So it wasn't really just pure education. It was actually a whole initiative within our family. We essentially eliminated screens as a family. So I wanted to model for my children that this wasn't a punishment for them. My older son has ADHD, so I know that there's a pretty significant dopamine addiction there when it comes to screens. He gets that constant dopamine hit and he doesn't know how to control himself. So it was absolutely critical for our family to do something quite extreme. And in doing that, it's essentially a cleanse, right? You are resetting your brain to not be so interested and hyper-focused on this one thing. And so we did it as a family. We did no screens. Of course, my husband and I were on the screens after they went to bed. But we set very clear expectations, and it was about building a trusting and very respectful sort of environment where we knew that we were all doing it together, and we took it week by week, and it ended up being 7 months long, and then we stopped counting because they realized that the screen was a privilege and it wasn't a right. So they didn't wake up asking for the screens. They knew that it was something they could earn. They knew that it was something that was limited or restricted. And when we did watch family movies together, it was all like 1990s and 2000s movies. So we're just really cognizant of sort of what was feeding into that addiction and how we can minimize it. And now, my older son loves Minecraft. He gets to play 45 minutes a day on the weekend. He doesn't ask for anything more than that because we now have a healthier relationship around it. So as much as I would love to say you can snap your fingers and it will be done, that's just not realistic, and especially because they're being exposed to it at school and elsewhere, and their peers have it. So it is a big effort, and I recognize not every family could do what I literally left my corporate job so I could do the screen detox full time. That's not why I left my job, but because I did, I had the capacity. So I would just say, just start somewhere. Just eliminate one screen session a week and go from there. And look, children, they need incentives. So I would definitely encourage you to think about how can you replace that with something else that is going to be just as rewarding.
Yeah, and I talk about in my book all the strategies about, this is why the book is focused on that. And really, honestly, from a brain perspective, children are only mimicking adults. That's how they learn. And so that's why I keep emphasizing it's really easy to want them to do something, but they can't if we can't. And so, and it's not anyone's fault, it's just that society's become so tech heavy that almost feels like an impossible task, but I think with even 5 minutes over dinner, so there's a whole bunch of families that have got these new strategies, family tech plans, charging in single places, no tech at dinner, having conversations, so the replacement of being seen. So when 15-year-old boys specifically highly encourage you, that's the age group of all the parents I was with in Canberra who've lost their 15-year-old sons, because they're being targeted from around the world. And it's pretty urgent call out to all of us to recognise that we need to do something together. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
I do have like a 7 or 8 page document I put together that highlights everything we did. It was a very strategic approach, but I think that's what's necessary these days. And the outcome was just phenomenal. I think our children are far more capable than we give them credit for, so we should start from a place of trust. Yes, happy to. Yeah, just sign up on the mailing list in the back, and I'm happy to share that.
Thank you. We have been doing a lot of the work in my house, and we have one who's already flown, a junior in college, so he's kind of missing all of that healing. He's remote. So how do we help infuse him with some of the goodness that, I tell him, this has shifted and this is what we're up to, and I can give him the evidence, but he doesn't get the interactions. How do I support that?
Yes, at the film festival, we had a man say exactly the same thing in the audience, and I thank you for making that change. That's huge. That's good enough. And what happens resonantly is that will, when he visits, it will be obvious, and you don't need to tell him, he'll feel it. And that's the biggest change you can make to break generational cycles. And what Joe talked about in the film is you just keep showing up. You keep texting, and whatever happened, it will eventually heal. And the first place it starts is with ourselves and how we change the environments that we're living in. And you don't need to worry, it will happen. So being calm and peaceful and not stressing too much, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't. No, we're all just little humans, and it's hard, and there's no perfect. And it's just tiny little steps, one at a time. And what you've already done is huge. So thank you for doing that.
I just want to add before, I know there are a lot of questions that came in through the poll. We are going to address all of them. So if you want the responses to these questions, just make sure that you're on a mailing list and we can send it around. Selena has just been so gracious. She's happy to go through all of that. There are quite a few questions in here, so we won't be able to get to that today.
My question is about the neurodivergent parent. I don't know how many people are here, and I think a lot of times the being seen part of that is the parent needing to be seen, is particularly, I would say, for the autism area, and how when you talk about reparenting, a lot of times it is brand new parenting because they don't even have the same modeling from somewhere else because it's just so completely different.
Absolutely.
And so I wondered if you could maybe address that even in that sense of being seen, and how to feel like you're not going crazy. And
yeah, well,
many
you're
times.
not. And you can speak to neurodivergent, you can speak to many. Everyone has a different story, and being seen means at least you're seeing that that's what's happened, and it's pulling it, and you'll hear it over and over again. It's just drawing that line in the sand, and it says it stops with me. So just because that happened 3 generations before, it doesn't happen 3 generations going forward. That's what this is all about. It's the awareness, they call it awakening awareness, that this is what you're doing, and it's not easy. And it's hard because you wish it was different for you, because you're able to do it differently for your family or anyone around you, because you understand you have an awareness that's much greater than people before you. And same for me or other people. Everyone on the film will talk to that. So we have someone that's a First Nations person on the film, and theirs goes back to societal level racism and stolen generation. They were taken from their all sorts of things, right? So and he talks about this as him saying, yes, I have to come at this still from compassion and empathy, and just accept that, and that's the part that Lael talks about, accept that has happened, but do you want it to keep passing down? And that's why it's such a not a easy subject, and it's emotional, and it can be distressful for us because we feel like our needs weren't met, and that leads to a lot of hurt and harm inside ourselves. But with this knowledge, we have the power, though, to make it better for the future generations, and that's what we're all about, right? We're making it better for people that are after us, and that's a really beautiful thing to do. So that's what happens as we raise education, scientific understanding and knowledge.
As a neurodivergent individual and a child who's twice exceptional, I would say one of the things that really helped me parent a neurodivergent child, it doesn't matter what diagnosis they have or what label, it's recognizing their brain's wired differently, vastly more different than a neurotypical brain. And so that is part of being seen. I have really figured out how my child's brain is wired so that I could create a support system that truly meets his needs. And in doing that, I was able to figure out what I needed that I never had. And so I think, neurodivergency to me is just a different profile. And so it just requires a different level of understanding. And what you often see as emotional complexity or behavioral challenges oftentimes can be explained by the fact that they're wired differently. And it's a beautiful thing. I take a strength-based approach to parenting my child, so I choose to see all of his strengths. And yes, there are challenges to overcome, but that doesn't define him. So I think with autism or anything else, that approach, I think, really helps with the connection.
That goes to being accepting what you have in front of you. And that's been hard in many generations because of the pressures of, culturally and other things that drive the expectations. And so parents are trying to live up to expectations, which I understand, as I did as well. And so, that's the compassion, empathy part that we have to bring to the conversation, because even if our needs weren't met, because we weren't seen, and we didn't even see that, did we? We didn't have the science to even show.
No idea.
Yeah, exactly.
That I had the struggles that I had until I started to parent my son differently. Any other questions in the audience? Because I see a little bit of a theme in the, well, first, everybody wants to organize a screening at the Playhouse, so I guess that's on my to-do list. And the other thing is, and thank you guys for filling this out and upvoting, I think there's a little bit of a question around, I think we address sort of the earlier childhood, but as teenagers, we oftentimes struggle to understand, knowing that it's not too late, but where do you almost start? If you're a parent to a teen, where do you start? And what is maybe the most impactful place to start? Something tangible that maybe the parents can take away.
I'm just going to keep saying it because it's a hard thing. It's ourselves. Because children reflect adults. Children are only reflecting what's happening around them. When they have healthy adults that are self-regulated around them, they are self-regulated, because that's how the brain works. I'm going to say it again and again. We are a social species. We are a reflection of our time and culture, and we impact everybody around us. So when we learn to regulate ourselves and our emotions and our expectations, and we learn to love the people around us in our life, and we give and not just take, it's a massive synergistic effect on brain health that lasts a lifetime of mental wellness. And it's hard to say that because you don't want to feel it yourself. And I get that. It took me a long time to accept that I was the problem for my children. And not, it's small problems, it's issues. It's not like, we're dancing in the icing sugar of life, let's face it. But I'm just saying that and that's why being seen is it. After 30 years of studying the brain, it came down to working out. My sister, who took her life in 2006, before I knew this, got a mental illness later in life because she was not seen. And I don't have time, it's in my book about how that happened, and it's no one's fault. My parents didn't mean it, but it explains all of the it explains a lot of things that happen in life, and it's the conversation that we don't like to have, and it's the one that we can now have because people are more open to changing it for the future. And it's us. It's all on us as adults to grow up, have awakening awareness, and I think I love that the words that they use you become a full grown-up adult when you reparent yourself.
Thank you, Selena. And, you know, as a parent who is constantly working on regulation, I think that's probably one of the hardest things is how do I manage my own emotions, especially when my children are triggering me left and right. And so that is probably the best place, in my opinion, to start. Figure out, well, why is that triggering me? And why is it so hard in that moment? And just like you teach your children, you know what? You can take a breath. You can show to them. Because in my parenting journey, the modeling has been the most impactful. I show them that I am struggling right now. My body doesn't feel good. I need to take a breath. If I am really losing it, I leave the room and I will go and hide in a closet or somewhere that my child or children can't see me. And then I come back and I say, I'm sorry. That was really hard for mommy, but you know, and they see me do this, and then they start to do it themselves, because you can tell them all day, every day, hey, take a deep breath, slow down, regulate yourself, and it's hard for them to understand what that looks like. And so I would say, you know, if you have teenage children, I'm sure you're being triggered left and right. I would just figure out how you take care of yourself in that moment.
And I think just down tools, go out to the park, sit on the bench next to each other because they don't like face-to-face. Go for a drive, put them next to you. Don't say anything. Silence. The indigenous culture teaches that let silence do the heavy lifting. Let silence do the heavy lifting. And so John Bray taught me this, and he said, you just get in the car, say nothing, just drive. And then you're off your screens and you're not telling them to do anything, and you're with them. They just want to be with you. I'm going to say it again. Being seen is about love. Now I'm shaking, but that's all they want. And they want to be loved for exactly who they are, no matter what that is. And that's really hard because of expectations. But when I see this in my niece who has Down syndrome, who's now representing Australia in swimming, she was seen and loved after they got over the shock for exactly who she was. And now she's thriving at 24, more than some people I know that went to the best schools, had everything purchased for them, and they're struggling because they don't feel like they achieved anything, and because they didn't make, you know what I mean? So this is what I mean by thriving minds and thriving mentally well. It's thriving and being happy with exactly where you are and who you have and what you have, and that's really hard when we have so many multiple levels of social media telling us this and that and everything. So I hope that sums up what I mean by being seen. It's all about love.
Well, thank you so much, Selena. And I think that's a great note to end on. Love. We all need it, and we can all
little ring here.
Share.
I hope you feel loved when you leave. That's the main aim here today, is to bring you some love, because you're doing the best you can, and it's good enough.
And so if your questions didn't get answered, please submit it via the poll. We will get every single one of those answered, and we will send that out. I just want to give a very heartfelt thanks to everybody for showing up today. This is the first step. If you feel like you haven't started, you already have. And also to the library team and the YMCA team for making this possible. What an honor it is to be here with Dr. Bartlett. And it's just such a gift to be in this town, truly, where we really care about each other, and all of this work is contributing to supporting us as individuals, as parents, as families, so that we can all thrive as a community.
Yes, and I want to finish by saying thank you so much for making this happen. It's not easy to do. I'm really, really grateful. Really grateful to the YMCA and to the New Canaan Library for hosting this. That's really, and such a beautiful place. Thank you so much. And the YMCA does a hugely wonderful job in Australia as well, because I do some work in child protection, youth justice and things like that, and they make such a huge difference in kids' lives, especially kids that have no family, and they show up for them. So thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for coming today with your time on a Friday, because I know you've got kids and all sorts of things happening, so thank you.
And we do, Selena is gracious to stay behind. You're welcome to stay behind and meet her, ask your questions. We also will put the screening on here on the screen, just in the background if anybody's interested in watching. Rebecca Fox, thank you so much for setting everything up. And Christina Barrett, thank you so much for all of your support. And thank you all for coming.